Itachi Shinden, Book of Bright Light Chapter 2 Part 2. It was coming up on a year since he had graduated from the academy. Itachi turned 8. His career as a ninja was going smoothly. He hadn't been sent on any particularly difficult missions. Looking back on his year, the mission first accomplished after becoming a genin, that of taking care of the U.S. spy, was maybe the hardest he'd been on. His relationship with his teammates was the same as always. Tenma still wouldn't accept him, and Shinko flared up, annoyed with Tenma's attitude. Yuki watched over them half in a panic. Itachi didn't do anything special, but simply stood there on his own. He thought it was a bit of an unnatural, warped team, but even so, do the same thing over and over for a year, and it becomes the norm. Even if they were still unable to really open up with each other, they somehow managed to execute their missions without fuss, and Itachi was satisfied with that. Because he had no intention of hanging around for that long. He would pile on the achievements, rise up to Chunin, then Jonin, before becoming the best ninja in the world and eradicating all war. For that reason, Itachi couldn't stand still. Instead of spending any of his precious time worrying about his teammates or his supervising Jonin, he poured his heart into polishing his own skills. So naturally, he had mastered ninjutsu to the extent that missions went almost too smoothly. If he had one bone to pick, it would be the fact that Yuki hadn't recommended him for the Chunin selection exams that year. Ostensibly, this was because Tenma and Shinko still hadn't reached the level where they could take the Chunin exams. Participation in the Chunin exams was based on the 3-person cell. When he learned he wouldn't be able to take the exams, in a move unusual for him, Itachi pressed Yuki about it. Normally, whatever was said to him, Yuki didn't bother to react, but just this once, he pushed back against Itachi forcefully. He insisted that it was simply impossible that year, with a look on his face that said he wasn't the least bit interested in what Itachi had to say. Itachi had no choice but to give up. But even if he wasn't allowed to take the Chunin exams, he could still be promoted directly to Chunin if the village administration and the Jonin recommended it. And looking at Team 2's results, it was immediately obvious just how much Itachi contributed to the team. It was a fact that his judgment surpassed that of even his supervising Jonin, and he had reached the highest levels in everything from ninja arts to fighting techniques, all of which had allowed him to rescue his team from danger any number of times. The administration will definitely say something. This belief firm in his heart, Itachi pushed on with the mission before him each day. The lands have all relaxed now that the war is over, so travel between countries is so much safer now. Which is why we can assign this sort of mission to a genin center team, Yuki said, eyes on the document in his hand. Itachi held the same document in his own hand. Mission to guard the daimyo of the Land of Fire. The village of Konoha was within the territory of the Land of Fire, and the ruler of the Land of Fire was the daimyo. But although the village was located in the Land of Fire, it functioned semi-autonomously, with an independent government structure that had the Hokage at the top. On paper, the daimyo of the Land of Fire was ranked above the Hokage, but currently, the land's military might rested with the ninja of Konoha, so the relationship between the two was more like an alliance of equals, rather than master and servant. The Land of Fire's daimyo visited Konoha annually. This regular event was extremely important for both sides, one that had been faithfully held, even during the Great War. Team 2 had been assigned to guard the daimyo on his trip. So the 4 of us are going to guard him? Tenma asked, looking at the document. Officially, yes, it will be us. But behind the scenes, there will be a 4-person Umbusel keeping an eye on things from the shadows. And before that even, the daimyo has his own 12 guardian ninja, an independent corps made up of only the most skilled ninja in the land. So we're like a formality, yeah? Well, basically, yes, Yuki said, nodding. The roads are quite safe since the end of the Great War, so the team with the genin who distinguished themselves the most during the year is selected to guard the daimyo. In other words, this assignment is a great honor. Tenma and Shinko both turned toward Itachi. Feeling their gazes on him, he kept his eyes on the document and stayed quiet. We meet tomorrow morning at 4. At the Aeon main gates. don't be late. Tenma and Shinko both assented aloud. Itachi nodded, still silent. All right then. Adjourned. Yuki vanished, almost before he was done speaking. Only the three genin remained. Tenma's eyes were on Itachi. Guess you're the village pet. You don't gotta go wording it like that. Shinko said. TCH. Tenma spit at the ground. Your attitude is just the worst. The usual, unchanging day-to-day. How many years could he stay here like this? A sigh threatened to spill out of him. But, remembering that his teammates were still there with him, he swallowed it before it passed his lips. He stood with the force of the repressed sigh, and turned toward the other two. All right, see you tomorrow. The words had no sooner passed his lips than he had disappeared. He always acts like he's all that. Tenma's grumbling reached his ears like an echo. I know I say this every year, but Konoha is so far, the old man said, sitting on a stump and staring at the teacup in his hand. A fan-shaped crown sat above his wrinkled face. A regular old man, simply fooling the world by clothing himself in gaudy finery. The daimyo of the land of fire. Behind the old man, a luxurious palanquin awaited its master's return. Around him were 2 of the 12 guardian ninja, and a dozen or so attendants. And Itachi's team too, spread out in a loose circle. A main road led from the capital of the land of fire to Konoha. They had already covered half the distance, and the village was just up ahead. Flat in and around the city, the road started to climb into the steepness of a mountain road. The new green of the woods hung over the heads of the party. It might be best if we hurry, Yuki said, ever so timidly. Otherwise, we won't reach the village before nightfall. Tenma and Shinko watched with exasperation at the jonin bowing his head to the point of servility, humble before even the 12 guardian ninja. I know. The daimyo sighed and lifted his bulk up, the enormous fan-shaped crown on his head rocking. The 12 guardian ninja watching over him each took one of his arms. Master Minazuki, Itachi said, staring at the road ahead, listening to the exchange between the daimyo and his men. What? The instant Yuki let his eyes chase after Itachi's gaze, his previous looseness vanished and his face grew grim. At the change in their teammates, Tenma and Shinko stiffened as well. The daimyo, Yuki said to the 12 guardian ninja. The 12 guardian ninja grabbed the old man from either side and lifted him into the palanquin. The 4 members of Team 2 stepped out in front of the daimyo's party and spread out in a diamond formation, with Yuki at the tip. The 4 stared at the man before them. He was approaching with a jaunty step, practically bouncing up off the ground. Nothing particularly suspicious about this. So then, why were all 4 of them uniformly on guard? The reason was the man's face, which was hidden behind a bizarre mask. The surface was painted a burnt orange with horizontal black stripes at uneven intervals. A jet black hollow around the right eye allowed the man to see. On his body, he wore a long black coat with an open collar that reached below the knee, loosely tied with a thick white bandage. His appearance was reminiscent of a clown. He was not a ninja. But Itachi's instincts were telling him there was something ominous about this man. His nervous tension was communicated to his 3 teammates, setting them on edge as well. Hey, are we all right? One of the 12 guardian ninja asked from behind. We're just going to check this out, Yuki replied. Please wait there. The man moved lazily forward during this exchange, and then threw his right arm up into the air. I have a question I'd like to ask, if you don't mind? He sounded extremely drowsy. Yuki unconsciously smiled broadly at the anticlimactic nature of the man's tone. This road is closed today. How did you get onto it? Oh, it is, then? The man spread out both arms in an exaggerated fashion. All eyes were on him. The air shook. Itachi felt a subtle disturbance in his chakra. Master Minazuki, he shouted, but he was too late. Jinjutsu. Itachi immediately dropped down into a defensive posture, while before his eyes, Yuki was frozen in place, standing rigidly straight. Through his skin, Itachi felt the people behind him freezing as well. The daimyo, his close aides, and the 2 guardian ninja had also been caught in the genjutsu. Oh ho, that there would be anyone who could dodge my genjutsu, In a flash, the voice of the buffoon of only moments ago was brimming with intelligence. The hole in the mask seized on Itachi. And that there would be 2. Itachi caught his breath at the fact that he was not the only one to avoid being caught up in the genjutsu. And then he felt a chakra and aura racing up on him. Something was squirming beside him. What did you do? Tenma. Before he knew it, his teammate was charging the man. As he ran, Tenma glanced at Itachi. My specialty is genjutsu. You can't get me with a technique like this. A technique like this. Oh, well said, the man murmured. He's laughing. That's how it looked to Itachi. Guy like this'll just take a second if we both go at him. Tenma, Itachi called out to stop him. We need to look carefully and calmly at our. Tenma thrust a kunai into the throat of the muttering man. A ninja who cannot objectively assess a situation. What's happening? Tenma asked, sounding scared. And for good reason. His arm had been sucked into the man's throat and shot out the back of his head. At first glance, it looked like his fist had smashed through the man's head, but the man didn't look the slightest bit uncomfortable, and not a drop of blood was spilled. Tenma's arm had passed right through the man's body. We'll die. Hinya. Tenma uttered a sound so strange, it was hard to believe it came from a human being. His body flew up into the air. The fulcrum was the man's arm, which pierced Tenma's body. This time, it was no illusion. As proof, fresh blood gushed from the boy's torso, falling to the ground like a waterfall. Tenma convulsed in tiny seizures, but gradually grew quieter until he finally stopped moving completely. Those who would rush forward, recklessly seeking distinction, die young. That is the reality of the world of the ninja. The man looked at Tenma's eyes, focused on an empty spot in the sky now. But it's already too late to teach you that, The man forcefully shook the arm that penetrated Tenma, and the corpse slid off and hit the ground. Of course, you did not fall, HM? And you did not foolishly charge like this child, but attempted instead to coolly assess both your power and mine. Wonderful, Uchiha Itachi. How do you know my name? I expect I know everything about the Uchihas. The masked man's bouncing was replaced by a no-nonsense step as he moved toward Itachi. He walked very much like a ninja now. My objective is that old man's life. If you sit and watch quietly, I will spare yours. I'm a ninja of Konoha. He felt a pressure like he was being choked, but he desperately forced his throat open enough to spit out the words. Like a frog under the watchful eye of a snake, his body wouldn't move the way he wanted it to. Perhaps because of the man's wordless pressure. Perhaps his instincts, sensing the difference between his own abilities and those of the man, refused to let him fight. Or perhaps all the blood in his body had collected in his head, as his brain frantically tried to analyze the inexplicable phenomenon that was the man's body. Whatever it was, the fact remained that he could not move. I can't come up with a clear solution to a situation I've been put in. This was the first time in his life anything like this had ever happened to him. The masked man came up beside him. On his approach to the daimyo, it felt like he stopped next to Itachi. Could you say what you said before one more time? The man cocked his head to one side. I am a ninja of Konoha, Itachi said, hoarsely. Does that indicate that you wish to die? Die, he thought vaguely. You can become a good ninja. There's no need for you to rush to your death here. Still, if you say you wish to die, then I won't try to stop you. Move, Itachi ordered his body. NGH. As the half-grown escaped him, Itachi managed to move just his right arm. He beat at the mask with his right hand, bereft of even a kunai. Just like Tenma's hand, his fist slipped through the face and came flying out the back of the man's head. He was sure the man was standing there before him, but no sensation of touch was communicated to his brain. The fear that he had already fallen prey to the man's jinjutsu grew in Itachi's heart. I see. So you wish to die? The man brought his arm toward Itachi and swung it downward. The palm stopped inches away from his face. The man looked up toward the sky, blotted out by the thick canopy above. That chakra, he murmured. Itachi Kakashi. The man turned his face back down toward Itachi. A narrow escape for you, Uchiha Itachi. The mask shaking. Itachi had no sooner had this thought than something incredible happened. The man was sucked into the hole in the mask. Before Itachi's eyes, the black body concentrated on a single point and was swallowed up by empty space, like the water in the bath after the plug is pulled out, until finally, even the hole in the mask disappeared. As Itachi stood there dumbfounded, 4 figures dropped down from the sky above. They wore animal masks. Anbu, an elite group under the direct control of the Hokage. Are you all right? The shortest of the 4, a boy with gray hair and a fox mask, shook Itachi by the shoulders. Hey! What happened? The other 3 Anbu were going around releasing the daimyo and the others from the jinjutsu. As he awoke, the daimyo spotted Tenma's body and shrieked. Everyone but me was suddenly hit with a jinjutsu, and it took a while to release them all. Sorry we're late. Itachi stared vacantly at the fox mask boy. Itachi Kakashi. How do you know that name? The boy asked. Itachi instinctively knew that the boy in front of him was Kakashi. End of part 2. Thank you for listening. Remember to like and subscribe for lots more.